The Typhar had always prided themselves on their unshakable superiority. Their empire spanned countless worlds, and for centuries they had conquered and obliterated anything that dared to challenge their rule. The galaxy was a vast and complex place, but to the Typhar, it was simple. Strength ruled, and the weak were meant to be crushed underfoot. They had never once encountered a species that was a real threat to their power. That is, until they discovered Earth. In the cold, vast reaches of space, the Typhar scouts picked up an anomaly, a distant planet, teeming with life but seemingly primitive. They initially dismissed it as just another unimportant world, filled with weak, undeveloped species. However, a closer examination revealed something puzzling. The planet, despite being relatively underdeveloped in terms of technology, emitted signals of undeniable intelligence. The Typhar were intrigued. For the first time in centuries, they felt the smallest flicker of curiosity. They sent one of their top diplomats, a cold and calculating leader named Zrethak, to make contact. His mission was simple: offer the humans a chance to join the Typhar Empire. The humans would provide resources, and in exchange, they would benefit from the Empire's vast technological advances and protection. The message was cordial, offering a vision of a brighter future, but it was not to be mistaken for a true alliance. It was a demand cloaked in diplomacy. Zrethak's ship arrived in Earth's orbit, and its arrival sent a ripple of excitement through the planet's scientific community. For years, humanity had been watching the stars, wondering if they were truly alone. The sudden appearance of an alien ship, broadcasting a message in their own language, shattered those doubts. It was an overwhelming moment, a moment of both awe and fear. Who were these beings? Why had they come? And what did they want? The United Nations held an emergency session, with world leaders gathering to debate the course of action. Some wanted to embrace the opportunity. The idea of joining a galactic empire, with access to untold technology and resources, was tempting. In exchange for cooperation, they could lift humanity out of its many struggles: poverty, disease, and environmental collapse. It seemed like a dream come true. But others saw the potential dangers of such an alliance. The human race was diverse, proud, and fiercely independent. To bend the knee to another species, no matter how powerful, would risk losing everything that made humanity unique. What would be left of human freedom if they allowed themselves to be governed by a race that had proven time and again that they were merciless conquerors? In the days that followed, tension gripped the world. But one individual, a military strategist named Colonel Harper, stood firm in his belief that humanity should not surrender. He knew the Typhar well. Their history of dominance, their belief that strength alone could secure their survival. But Harper had spent years studying the Typhar's communications and battle tactics. He understood something others did not. The Typhar might have superior technology, but humanity possessed something they lacked: the ability to adapt, to learn, to survive against all odds. Harper gathered a small but influential group of like-minded individuals, all of whom believed that humanity's strength lay not in technology, but in its spirit. Together, they crafted a response, a single message that would shake the Typhar to their core. As Earth's leaders debated, Harper took matters into his own hands. He accessed the global communication network, bypassing bureaucratic red tape and political divisions. The message was simple, stark, and direct. We are humanity. We do not yield. Now you will comprehend real fear. The transmission was broadcast across the Typhar's communication channels, a chilling declaration of defiance. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the Typhar's response came, not with words, but with a command to prepare for the invasion. They would show humanity just how insignificant they truly were. But the humans had made their stand. The message was sent, and there was no turning back. The world, once divided and uncertain, was now united. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together, because they knew one thing for sure: They were not going down without a fight. The weeks following the Sci-Fi's initial message were filled with confusion and fear. The arrival of a technologically superior alien species, offering both an opportunity and a threat, left the leaders of Earth scrambling. They held meetings, summoned experts, and sought counsel from every corner of the planet. The debate grew heated, with no clear consensus emerging. The more peaceful factions in the United Nations argued that humanity should negotiate, seek cooperation, and secure the benefits of alliance. Access to advanced technology, trade, and the promise of protection from potential enemies in the galaxy. But there was another voice in the room, louder and more insistent than the others. Colonel William Harper, a respected military strategist known for his unyielding determination and sharp intellect, had spent years studying the patterns of galactic powers. Harper was not easily intimidated, and he saw the HFY for what they truly were, an empire of conquest, interested only in expanding their dominion at the expense of those weaker than them. To surrender would be the beginning of humanity's subjugation. "Make no mistake," Harper said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of urgency. "The HFY are not here to help us. They offer no alliance. They offer us servitude. To accept their terms would be to sacrifice everything that makes us human." His words resonated with some of the leaders, especially those from nations with histories of rebellion against tyranny. It was in humanity's nature to resist being ruled by outsiders, to fight for freedom and autonomy. The legacy of centuries of wars for independence, civil rights, and justice ran deep. To bow before an alien overlord was not an option, not for those who remembered what it meant to fight for one's rights. But Harper knew that this was more than just a question of political autonomy. The message that HFY sent, the very idea that they believed Earth's inhabitants would accept subjugation, was an insult. Humanity's survival had never been guaranteed. The species had clawed its way through thousands of years of trial and error, thriving through adversity. Now, they faced their greatest test. "Let's show them who we are," Harper declared, as the others in the room looked on. "We do not need their technology to survive. We have something they will never understand, the power of human will." It was in that moment that a decision was made. A decision to defy the HFY, to prove to them that humanity was not just a primitive species, that, despite the odds, humanity would never kneel. But the strategy wasn't to wage an all-out war right away. The first move had to be psychological. A warning, a declaration of defiance that would shake the HFY to their core. And for that, Harper had the perfect plan. In a hidden underground facility, deep within the mountains, humanity's greatest minds had been working in secret. Years of covert projects had led to the development of a weapon unlike anything the HFY had ever seen. It wasn't a weapon of mass destruction. No, it was something far subtler, something that would strike at the heart of their arrogance. Harper's team had stumbled upon a discovery decades ago, an ancient device buried beneath the Earth's surface, hidden away by a long-lost civilization. It was a weapon of immense power, capable of manipulating the very fabric of space and time. The humans had kept it a secret, hidden from the world's governments until now. Now, with the HFY closing in, they would use it. The weapon wasn't ready for a full assault, but it didn't need to be. The mere existence of it, a weapon that could warp reality itself, would be enough to send a message that humanity could not be so easily defeated. The United Nations held a tense final vote on how to respond. After days of deliberation, the decision was unanimous. Harper and his team would broadcast one final message, a declaration to the HFY that would leave no room for doubt. As the humans prepared the transmission, Harper stood before the world's leaders. The final words of the message were simple, but potent. The world watched as the screen flashed with the words in the HFY's language. "We are humanity. We do not yield. Now you will comprehend real fear." The silence in the room was deafening. The words, once spoken, could not be taken back. Earth had made its choice. There was no turning back now. And so, as the broadcast echoed through the stars, The Typhar, still in disbelief, prepared for what they believed would be the final conquest. What they didn't know was that the humans were already prepared to face them, not with an army of advanced ships or weaponry, but with the one thing that Cypher could never predict: human resolve. The message had been sent. The Cypher's first response was immediate, a mixture of confusion and contempt. How dare these insignificant creatures defy them? They believed the humans were simply scared, attempting to bluff their way out of an inevitable defeat. They saw no real threat in a species that hadn't even mastered space travel to the extent of their own empire. The arrogance of the Cypher clouded their judgment, blinding them to the true significance of humanity's message. As days passed, the Cypher made their move. Their fleet, massive and imposing, emerged from the dark depths of space, bearing down on Earth like an inevitable storm. They were led by their most seasoned general, Zrethak, whose reputation for ruthlessness was known across the galaxy. His orders were clear: neutralize this human threat quickly and decisively. The world watched with bated breath. Governments mobilized, preparing for the worst. The United Nations Emergency Council convened again, but now there was no time for debate. Earth's military forces, pieced together from every corner of the globe, began to take defensive positions. Every nation contributed what they could, knowing that survival meant cooperation. They could not afford the luxury of division. Colonel Harper stood at the forefront of the global response. He had led many campaigns in his life, but nothing could prepare him for the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The Typhar were unlike any force humanity had ever faced. They brought with them ships capable of incinerating entire cities in seconds, weapons that could tear through the atmosphere like a knife through butter. But Harper was no stranger to adversity. If humanity had one thing in its favor, it was its ingenuity and ability to adapt. The first skirmish came quickly. As the Typhar warships entered Earth's atmosphere, they unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, turning large swaths of the planet's surface into molten ruins. The skies above cities like New York, Tokyo, and Moscow turned into chaotic hellscapes, fire and smoke blotting out the sun. Entire fleets of human aircraft, some equipped with experimental defense systems, were obliterated within minutes. It seemed as though humanity was on the brink of extinction. But then something unexpected happened. A signal was broadcast, loud and clear, cutting through the chaos. It wasn't the usual military command. It was a human voice, calm and unwavering, speaking to the Typhar. You've made a grave mistake. You underestimate humanity. This is just the beginning. The Cypher, momentarily taken aback, scanned the signal's origin. What they found was both confusing and unnerving. Deep in the mountains of North America, an underground facility buzzed with activity. The humans were not retreating, nor were they fleeing in terror. Instead, they were preparing something that Cypher could not understand. It was then that they felt it. A strange pull, a shift in the fabric of space itself. The weapon that humanity had hidden for so long had been activated. From beneath the ocean depths, a colossal structure began to rise. Slowly, but unmistakably. It was unlike anything the Typhar had ever seen. It wasn't just a ship or a fortress. It was something far more powerful, a technological marvel capable of manipulating the very core of reality itself. The humans had kept this weapon a secret, but now, in the face of annihilation, it was their last line of defense. The Typhar had no idea what they were facing. This ancient weapon, long dormant, was not just a defensive tool. It was a weapon of creation and destruction on a scale that Cypher could not even begin to comprehend. As the massive structure broke the surface of the ocean, humanity launched their counterattack. At first, it seemed like an act of desperation, an attempt to slow the inevitable. But as the humans unleashed their weapon's power, the Typhar quickly realized how wrong they were. The weapon didn't just fire conventional blasts. It twisted the very gravitational forces around them, causing the Typhar ships to lose their footing in space. Some ships were torn apart by sudden anomalies in spacetime, while others were hurled into nearby asteroids or ripped into distant corners of the galaxy. The Cypher couldn't track the humans' movements. Each strike was delivered with pinpoint accuracy, as if the weapon itself could predict the next move. Harper watched as the Cypher fleet began to crumble under the assault. The sight was staggering. What had once been a virtually unstoppable force was now a broken, retreating army, caught off guard by the ingenuity of the human defense. The tide of the battle was shifting, and for the first time, the Cypher realized that they were not facing an insignificant species. They were facing a species with the potential to destroy them. Srethak, now panicked, ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The human weapon continued to strike, its power unrelenting. The first wave of the invasion had failed, but the Cypher were far from defeated. They would regroup, and they would strike again. But humanity had sent a clear message. They would not bow. They would not be crushed so easily. The Cypher might have the power to destroy, but humanity had the will to survive. And that, it seemed, was something the Cypher could never anticipate. The Cypher were not accustomed to failure. They had dominated the galaxy for centuries, and their arrogance had grown in proportion to their power. But what they encountered on Earth was unlike anything they had anticipated. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had shown a tenacity that could not be easily quashed. And now, with their fleet in disarray, the Cypher found themselves questioning the very foundation of their empire. General Srethak, once unshakable in his confidence, paced restlessly on the bridge of his flagship. The devastation caused by humanity's mysterious weapon was unlike anything he had witnessed before. His ships, once indestructible, were torn apart by gravitational anomalies, their systems overloaded by strange distortions in spacetime. He had lost more than half of his fleet in the initial strike. His eyes burned with frustration. He could not afford another defeat, not when the Empire's reputation was at stake. "Retreat," Srethak growled, his voice low and filled with disdain. "Regroup. We will crush them next time." But as his forces began their retreat, Srethak could not shake the feeling of dread. What kind of weapon had the humans unleashed? It was clear that they had prepared for this day, hiding their most powerful resource until the moment they needed it most. The weapon wasn't just a marvel of technology. It was something more, something that defied the natural laws of the universe. Back on Earth, the humans knew they had won the first round, but the war was far from over. Colonel Harper, standing in the command center, watched as the Cypher retreated into the depths of space. The victory was sweet, but he was no fool. The Cypher would regroup, and when they did, they would come back stronger, angrier, and even more determined to conquer. "We've only delayed the inevitable," Harper said, his voice grim. "They'll be back, and they won't underestimate us again." His words rang true. Though the first wave of the Cypher invasion had been repelled, the humans understood that they had only bought themselves time. The message had been sent loud and clear. Humanity would not needle. But now, it was time to prepare for the Cypher's inevitable return. In the aftermath of the first battle, humanity began to regroup and build on their newfound strength. The weapon they had uncovered, an ancient construct hidden deep within the Earth's crust, was not something they could use lightly. It required immense energy, careful calibration, and precision to operate. But now that it was active, they needed to unlock its full potential. The humans had no idea where this technology had come from. The ancient device had been buried for millennia, its origins lost to history. But in their time of need, it had been humanity's trump card. The structure, which had been dormant for so long, was powered by a combination of advanced principles that even the most brilliant scientists could barely understand. It was as though it had been built for a future civilization that was now standing at the brink of annihilation. Colonel Harper worked with the top minds of Earth, including engineers, physicists, and ancient historians, to decipher how the weapon operated. Each day brought new revelations. The weapon could manipulate not just gravity and spacetime, but it could also harness the planet's natural energy sources. It was, in essence, a planet-wide force that could reshape entire landscapes and alter the course of battles with a single thought. As the Cypher retreated, they quickly realized that they had underestimated their opponents. Their technology was far superior to humanity's in terms of firepower, but the humans had something that Cypher lacked: the ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. The ancient weapon was proof of that. The humans had taken something beyond their time and made it their own, turning it into the key to their survival. But this weapon, powerful as it was, had limitations. It could not be used indefinitely without consequences. The strain it placed on the planet's resources was immense, and the longer it remained active, the greater the risk of catastrophic failure. The humans were playing a dangerous game. They needed to find a way to keep the Cypher at bay long enough to fully unlock the potential of their new weapon. As Earth's leaders debated their next move, Colonel Harper prepared for the inevitable. The Cypher would return, and when they did, humanity would need more than just a weapon. They would need unity, strategy, and resilience, the very traits that had allowed them to survive this long in a galaxy full of far more powerful civilizations. The next phase of the war was fast approaching, and for the first time in the history of the Cypher Empire, they would face a species that would not bend, break, or surrender. Humanity had shown them what real fear was, and now they would learn that humans were capable of even more. As the Cypher fleet limped back into deep space, the humans held their breath, uncertain of what the future would bring. The victory over the first wave of invaders was a fleeting moment of triumph. The weapon, powerful as it was, had left Earth scared, both physically and mentally. Every nation had given its all to the defense effort. But the reality was clear: humanity was vastly outmatched. The Cypher had access to far superior technology, and Earth had only been lucky this time. Colonel Harper, along with Earth's top scientists and military leaders, knew that the Cypher wouldn't make the same mistake twice. They had retreated, but only to plan their next assault. Harper had spent sleepless nights in the war room, surrounded by strategists, engineers, and analysts. They all knew what was coming. They had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. "We have no time to waste," Harper muttered, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "The Cypher will regroup, and when they do, they'll return with everything they've got. We need to prepare, and we need to prepare now." The world's military forces were put on high alert, but Harper's words struck a chord with the leaders of Earth. They knew they had to act swiftly, pooling their resources together in a unified front. For the first time in human history, the globe was truly united. Old political divisions, old rivalries, all of it was forgotten. Humanity had one purpose: to survive. But the weapon, powerful though it was, could not be their only means of defense. While it had proven its devastating potential, it was clear that using it recklessly would eventually lead to catastrophic consequences. The Cypher had superior warships, advanced energy weapons, and shields that seemed impenetrable. Humanity's only hope was to find a way to counter the Cypher's advantage, and quickly. Across the world, humanity's greatest minds worked together, synthesizing technology from the Cypher ships they had captured and the knowledge they had gleaned from ancient sources. It was a race against time. The clock was ticking, and the threat of the Cypher returning loomed larger every day. In secret underground bunkers, engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit humanity's space fleets. The old designs, once considered inadequate in the face of such overwhelming might, were now being reimagined. The weapons that had failed during the first battle were now being upgraded with new energy cores, particle disruptors, and stealth technology that had never been tested before. Humanity would not rely solely on the ancient weapon anymore. It would need a more coordinated, adaptive force to stand a chance against the Cypher's advanced tactics. Harper oversaw every aspect of the preparations. He knew the Cypher would likely target Earth's most densely populated cities again. The human fleet's mission was simple: defend Earth's vital infrastructure and ensure that the Sci-Fi would not find a way to cripple humanity's ability to resist. Meanwhile, the weapon, now dubbed the Aegis, was being refined. Its immense power was a double-edged sword. The more it was used, the greater the strain it placed on the planet. Scientists feared that if they weren't careful, its destructive capabilities could destabilize Earth's core, threatening not just the invaders, but all of humanity. It was a delicate balance between using the weapon's raw power and preserving the planet's fragile existence. But the world was united, and there was no turning back. Humanity had faced extinction countless times throughout history, but each time they had adapted, they had overcome. And this time would be no different. Srethak, the Sci-Fi general, was not unaware of the preparations taking place on Earth. He had retreated not because of fear, but because of necessity. His fleet had suffered irreparable damage, and to strike again, he would need to regroup, resupply, and come up with a new strategy. The Sci-Fi had learned a valuable lesson. Earth was not as weak and helpless as they had believed. The humans' ability to innovate, to rally together under pressure, was something that Sci-Fi had never encountered before. And Srethak was no fool. He knew that their next assault would need to be decisive. The humans had only delayed the inevitable. They were not to be underestimated. As the days turned into weeks, the tension on Earth reached a boiling point. Every government, every military force, every civilian was preparing for what was coming. The skies were filled with reconnaissance satellites, monitoring the approach of the Sci-Fi's fleet. Humanity had learned to be vigilant. Their survival depended on it. But no one knew what would happen next. The world was on the edge, standing between hope and annihilation. In every home, in every country, people asked the same question. Would humanity be able to stop the Sci-Fi? Would they be able to fight back and win? The Sci-Fi had underestimated humanity once. Now it was time for them to understand that the humans would not stop fighting until the very end. Because the truth was simple, Earth would never surrender. And as long as there was life on this planet, humanity would fight, with everything they had. The days passed in a tense, nerve-wracking silence. Across the globe, humanity's military forces and engineers worked around the clock to fortify defenses and complete their preparations. The Sci-Fi were silent, their fleet hidden in the far reaches of space, waiting for the right moment to strike. But even as humanity's forces tightened their grip on readiness, they knew the threat was far from over. A storm was coming, and this time, the Sci-Fi would be ready. Colonel Harper stood before a large, dimly lit map of Earth, his eyes fixed on the screen displaying the latest satellite data. The movements of the Sci-Fi fleet were still unknown, but Harper could feel it. The calm before the storm. His fingers hovered above the control panel, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Sci-Fi's next move was imminent. The Aegis weapon stood at the ready, a symbol of humanity's defiance and ingenuity. The massive structure, now fully operational, had been activated and calibrated to near perfection. But Harper knew it wouldn't be enough. The weapon's immense power was a wild card, unpredictable and dangerous. Every use of it came with the risk of destabilizing Earth's delicate ecosystem, and the clock was ticking down on how long they could use it without catastrophic consequences. Despite its immense power, the Aegis was not the answer. Humanity would need more than just a weapon to survive. "We don't have the luxury of time," Harper muttered to himself. "We need to end this." His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden transmission alert. The communications officer's voice crackled over the speaker, sounding tense and hurried. "Colonel Harper, you need to see this." Harper's heart skipped a beat. Without a word, he moved to the command center. The satellite feed displayed a massive distortion in space, growing larger with each passing moment. The Sci-Fi fleet had reappeared. The alien armada was unlike anything humanity had faced before. It was more formidable than the first wave, reinforced, enhanced, and with new tactics that sent a chill through the room. They had studied humanity's response, and now they were prepared. The fleet's sheer size seemed to stretch the length of the horizon, a collection of ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. Zrethak's voice rang out across the frequencies, filled with authority and fury. Humanity, you have been given a chance. Your defiance has cost you dearly. This time, we will show you what real power is. The transmission cut off, and Harper's mind raced. The Typhar were not just attacking with brute force. They had adapted to humanity's countermeasures. Zrethak had clearly learned from their initial mistake. They would not underestimate Earth again. The Typhar were determined to finish what they started. Activate the Aegis. Now, Harper barked. The weapon had to be used. Humanity's last line of defense had to hold long enough for the human fleet to regroup and retaliate. The soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had worked tirelessly for months watched with bated breath as the countdown to activation began. But as the Aegis hummed to life, something unexpected happened. A ripple surged through space, distorting the weapon's power. The gravitational anomaly that the weapon created was more intense than anything they had calculated. A wave of energy burst outward, knocking several ships off course, but the sheer force of the weapon's impact sent shockwaves through Earth itself. Buildings shook, mountains trembled, and the ground cracked open in places. "This is beyond anything we've seen," one of the scientists said, panic creeping into his voice. Harper's eyes widened. The power of the Aegis was greater than even they had expected, but something was off. The weapon's influence was spreading further than anticipated, affecting Earth's magnetic field and atmospheric stability. If it wasn't stopped, it could cause irreversible damage to the planet. Harper slammed his fist against the control panel. They were on the edge of a breakthrough. But if the Typhar hadn't anticipated humanity's weapon, they certainly hadn't anticipated its consequences. As the weapon's energy continued to build, Harper's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose control. "We need to shut it down," Harper ordered. "Now." But before they could deactivate the Aegis, the Typhar retaliated. Their fleet unleashed a barrage of energy beams, targeting the weapon and Earth's major defenses. The first waves of destruction hit critical cities: Tokyo, London, New York, the shining beacons of humanity's civilization. The Typhar were relentless. Earth was now in the throes of total war. The human fleet, though smaller in size, surged forward. In the vastness of space, their ships bristled with experimental technology, powered by the combined knowledge of every nation on Earth. The newly upgraded fighters, with cloaking systems and advanced weapons, darted in and out of combat, striking Typhar vessels with precision. They had learned to adapt, to fight smarter, and they would use every ounce of ingenuity to strike back. The battle raged on, but humanity's defiance was felt across the stars. The Typhar may have been the superior force, but the humans had something far more powerful: the will to survive and the heart to fight against overwhelming odds. In the command center, Colonel Harper stood with his back straight, eyes fixed on the battle unfolding before him. He knew this was just the beginning of a long and brutal fight. But one thing was certain: humanity was not going to go down without a fight. The Typhar had underestimated them once, but this time they would learn that even the most advanced empire in the galaxy was no match for the indomitable will of humanity. The chaos of the battlefield was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. The sky above Earth was a swirling mass of energy as the Typhar unleashed wave after wave of firepower upon the planet. Their ships, dark and ominous, cut through the heavens with terrifying precision, annihilating everything in their path. The Aegis weapon, now fully activated, continued to release gravitational pulses, distorting the very fabric of space-time. The air crackled with tension as the world held its breath. Colonel Harper's mind raced as he watched the destruction unfold on his screens. Cities around the world were in ruins. New York, the symbol of human achievement, was now nothing more than a smoldering crater. Tokyo's skyline had collapsed under the weight of the Typhar bombardment. But humanity was not finished yet. The human fleet, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, fought with every ounce of strength they had left. They had learned from their mistakes, adapted their tactics, and were using the terrain of Earth's atmosphere to their advantage. Harper clenched his fists, watching the human ships dart and weave through the chaos, their cloaking devices making them nearly invisible to the Typhar sensors. The newly upgraded weapons were proving effective. They were able to strike the Typhar fleet's weak points, knocking out shields and disabling engines. It wasn't enough to destroy the invaders, but it slowed them down, buying time for humanity's final stand. "We can't afford to wait much longer," Harper muttered, his gaze fixed on the central display. The Aegis had already begun to destabilize the planet's magnetic core, and if it wasn't deactivated soon, the entire Earth could be torn apart. The Sci-Fi had their own trump card. Zrithak, the alien general, had been waiting for the right moment to deploy the ultimate weapon of their fleet, a massive energy cannon capable of destroying entire planets. It was their final solution. He was prepared to unleash it, to wipe out humanity in one fell swoop and burn Earth to its core. The cannon, located on the Sci-Fi flagship, was now charging, its power growing by the second. "Colonel, the cannon is charging," a voice called out from behind him. Harper turned to face his chief strategist, a woman named Captain Lydia Wells. Her face was tight with worry, her eyes scanning the data pouring in. "If they fire it, we won't survive. We have to stop them, or Earth is done for." Harper didn't hesitate. He knew what had to be done. The Aegis had given humanity a fighting chance, but it was time for a more direct approach. "Prepare the fleet for a final assault. We'll hit them where it hurts. The flagship. We'll need everything we've got to break through their defenses. This is it." The human fleet, battered and scarred, rallied under Harper's command. The strategy was simple. Take out the Typhar flagship. If they could disable the energy cannon before it was fired, they might just have a chance to turn the tide of the war. It was a suicide mission, but it was humanity's only hope. As the human ships made their approach, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The Typhar fleet had no intention of letting them get close. Energy blasts and missiles streaked across the sky, turning the battlefield into a nightmare of flashing lights and explosions. But the human fleet, driven by the knowledge that their survival depended on this last stand, pressed forward. Harper's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the human ships dive toward the Sci-Fi flagship, dodging blasts and returning fire with everything they had. The flagship, a massive, nearly invulnerable behemoth, unleashed a barrage of deadly energy, but the humans had one advantage. They knew the ship's weak points. Every fighter and warship in the fleet targeted the cannon's power core, firing relentlessly to weaken the flagship's defenses. The Sci-Fi flagship began to tremble under the relentless assault. Sparks flew from the energy cannon, and for a moment, it looked as though the ship might explode under the strain. But the Sci-Fi were not finished. Zrithak, furious at the audacity of humanity's attack, ordered his remaining fleet to converge on the human ships. The final battle was about to reach its apex. In the command center, Harper barked orders, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "Keep the pressure on. We're almost there." The human ships drew closer, the distance between them, and the Sci-Fi flagship shrinking with every passing second. Just as it seemed like the flagship would unleash its final devastating blast, something unexpected happened. The Aegis weapon, still active, sent out another pulse. This time, it was stronger than ever before. The gravitational field created by the Aegis reached out once more, distorting space-time around the Typhar fleet. Ships were flung into one another, their hulls cracking under the force of the pulse. The flagship, already damaged, was knocked off course, its energy cannon destabilizing. A massive explosion erupted from the heart of the ship as its core ruptured under the pressure. Harper's breath caught in his throat as the massive Sci-Fi flagship began to break apart. It was over. The flagship had been destroyed. But the battle was far from finished. The remaining Sci-Fi fleet, enraged by the destruction of their flagship, continued their assault. Humanity had dealt a crippling blow to the invaders, but the war was still on. The Sci-Fi would never surrender so easily. This was just one step toward the ultimate victory, but for the first time, humanity had proven they could fight on equal terms. "We've done it, but this isn't over yet," Harper muttered. "The fight for Earth is just beginning." The shockwaves from the destruction of the Sci-Fi flagship echoed through space. For a moment, Earth's skies seemed to hold their breath. The massive, ominous ships of the Sci-Fi fleet trembled and faltered, their once unshakable presence now pierced by the loss of their command center. The surviving human ships, battered and broken, hung in space like a defiant banner of survival. For the first time since the invasion had begun, the Sci-Fi were on the back foot. Colonel Harper stood in the command center, his heart pounding in his chest. The human fleet, though outmatched, had struck a decisive blow. The flagship was gone, and with it, the key to the Sci-Fi's devastating weapon. But as the dust began to settle, Harper knew it wasn't over. "All ships, report in," Harper called out, his voice steady, though the weight of the moment pressed heavily on his shoulders. One by one, the communication lines opened, and the status of each ship filtered in. Most were damaged, many beyond repair, but they were still operational. However, there was no time for relief. The Sci-Fi fleet, though thrown into disarray, had not surrendered. They were regrouping, readying for their last-ditch effort to crush humanity. "We need to finish this now," Captain Wells said, her voice tight with urgency. She stood beside Harper, her face drawn with exhaustion. "We've taken down their flagship, but the core of their fleet is still intact. They'll try to rebuild, reinforce, and strike again. We have to make sure they don't have a chance to retaliate." Harper nodded, but his mind was already spinning with the brutal reality of their situation. Yes, the Sci-Fi had lost their flagship, but their vast fleet was still capable of enormous destruction. The Sci-Fi would not let a loss like this go unanswered. They would come again, and if humanity didn't finish the job now, the price of failure would be catastrophic. "Send a message to every nation," Harper said, turning to a communications officer. "Tell them we're going in for the final push. All remaining human ships are to target the remaining Sci-Fi forces. We end this here." The order was transmitted, and humanity's remaining fleet, weakened but resolute, set its course toward the heart of the Sci-Fi armada. The final battle had arrived. As the human ships advanced, the last of the Sci-Fi forces began to regroup, consolidating their remaining warships into a unified front. Zrithak, though furious with the loss of the flagship, was not ready to concede. The human victory was not final. It was an inconvenience. With the right tactics, he could still crush them. His fleet was battered, but the Sci-Fi were a race of survivalists, and they would not go down without one last effort. "Ready the fleet for a counteroffensive," Zrithak commanded, his voice cold. "We will show them the true power of the Sci-Fi. We will annihilate them in one final strike." The two fleets met in the dark expanse of space, a clash of ancient empires, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. Energy beams streaked across the void, tearing through the night. The soundless vacuum of space was filled with the thunder of destruction. Human ships, though outgunned and outnumbered, fought with everything they had left. Every laser shot, every missile, every maneuver was driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of everything. In the midst of the chaos, the Aegis weapon, still active but now at the brink of collapse, continued to exert its power, causing gravitational distortions and pulling Sci-Fi ships into violent collisions. The Sci-Fi were starting to lose their grip, but it was clear that the weapon could not be relied upon for much longer. Harper's eyes were locked on the battle unfolding on his display. The human fleet was hanging on, but the cost was mounting. Every minute brought them closer to victory, but also to the point of no return. "We can't hold out much longer," Captain Wells said, watching the damage reports flood in. "We need to take out their command ships, or we'll lose everything we fought for." Harper nodded, his mind working in overdrive. He understood the gravity of the situation. If the Typhor leadership wasn't taken out, their resolve would remain unbroken, and they would rally to crush humanity once and for all. "Get me a direct line to the fleet," Harper ordered. "Tell them to focus on the Typhor command ships. That's where the heart of the resistance lies." The order went out, and the human fleet, battered as it was, turned its remaining firepower toward the heart of the Typhor's command structure. It was a risky move, but the only one that could win the war. The battle stretched on, both fleets pushing to the breaking point. For every human victory, the Typhor responded with ruthless efficiency. But then, finally, it happened. The Typhor command ships, crucial to their tactical cohesion, were hit with a concentrated barrage of fire. The power cores of the command vessels detonated in a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves throughout the Typhor fleet. Zrethak's face twisted in fury as his command structure crumbled before his eyes. The remaining Typhor ships faltered, their once formidable forces now in disarray. Their pride had been broken. The fear was palpable. "This is it," Harper said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We've won." As the final Typhor ships were disabled and the battle died down, the remnants of the Typhor fleet retreated, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement of humanity's resilience. They would live to fight another day, but for now, Earth had been saved. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. The war was not just a fight for survival. It was a statement that even against the mightiest empire in the galaxy, Earth would never kneel. As the last of the alien ships vanished from Earth's orbit, Colonel Harper looked out at the stars. The battle had been won, but the cost had been high. The Earth had changed forever, and humanity would never be the same. But one thing was certain: the humans had proved something that day. Their strength, their ingenuity, and their unwavering will to fight for their home. The dawn of a new era had begun.